Hello, if you've been here before, welcome back. If not, hi. My name is David. I make videos talking about media that I want to talk about. If you've seen this intro before, you can go ahead and skip to this time code. If not, I am ranking every single episode of Malevolent, which is a horror podcast created by Harlan Guthrie. He writes it, directs it, edits it, voice acts, scores, does every single thing for this show. Shout out to Harlan Guthrie. Malevolent follows Arthur Lester, a PI in Arkham 1920s, who becomes bound to a fragment of the King in Yellow, who is called John. And they work together because Arthur's eyesight is gone and John leads him. They work together to solve mysteries and figure out what is going on in the world. This show encompasses 6 seasons, and so I am hoping to record all the ranking right now. We'll see how far I go, but I know at least I'll do season 1 and 2. I am releasing these videos in 3 parts. The first part will be seasons 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6, because that's good chunks. Each is about 20 episodes long, so that's really fun. I will base my rankings on personal opinions, impact on the story, what I think about this episode and stuff like that. It's all my own opinion, obviously. If you disagree, please let me know in the comments below. If you agree with what I say as well, please let me know down below. And above all, spoiler alert for the entirety of the show, of each season, because I will be talking about every episode with the knowledge of what's going to happen in the future. Show heavy spoilers for the entirety of the show. If you have not watched it, go ahead and do so. So let's get into ranking every single episode of Malevolent. Season 5 and 6, I had to do a different journal. I ran out of space for my first journal. This only takes up about half of it for seasons 5 and 6, and I might fill in the rest with other things about the King in Yellow. I'm not sure, but that's why this is a different journal. Also, if you can see, I don't know, it's a leather binding, faux leather. It smells faux leather. While the first one was I believe it's crushed velvet or some sort of velvety texture. Felt texture? I'm not sure. Anyways, this is a different notebook I found out. It's from a brand called Threshold. I didn't know that. Alright, season 5, we follow Arthur and John in the past, in England, in an alternate history. I will say this is probably my least favorite season, and will be reflected in the rankings. But we'll get into that. The rankings. S tier, we have Yorick's laugh. I really like Yorick's laugh. The sound effects there is probably the best thing this season. In A tier, we have Lilith mentioned. I love Lilith so much, which is why it's A tier. B tier, we return to not being able to shower again, because they're in England, so they can't shower. In C tier, we have Mother Darkness's plan, because whatever she's planning is bad. Worst tier, worm sound effects, because they use some worm sound effects here that are absolutely disgusting. And it's really fun to listen to that, but it's also really bad. So it's going to be in the lowest tier. So similar to Coda, similar to Prelude, Intermezzo, I'll have as 40.5, which is going in S tier, Yorick's laugh. This is probably the most impactful, one of the most impactful preludes, where we have, coming off of season 4, Kane is telling Arthur and John what he wants them to do. He wants them to go find the Black Stone. The last time it was seen was in England. The 3 soldiers that they had encountered in part 14 were Enti, Irwin, and Nist, 3 soldiers who were hunting the Black Stone. Kane wants the Black Stone, and so he's telling Arthur and John, you need to go do this. But also, he gives really amazing world-building lore about eldritch deities and the multiverse and stuff like that. He uses the piano reference to be like, this key is your world. This key is a different world. This key, all of those keys are different worlds. But inside the piano is the multiverse eldritch deity thing. And I can play all of these keys. That's a really fun metaphor. He's also showing them different times, different parts of the multiverse. I want to point out the moment where Arthur in Addison in the red right hand in, he hears someone breathing in the wall. That's himself in the wall. Doesn't do anything, but it's a really cool moment there. But also Darkther. Where's Darkther in my notes? In the first episode, the first vote of 7 people out of 8 voting to not kill Eddie. If it was the other way around, Darkther would have happened. It would have killed Eddie in the first place. Really fun there. We return back to what happened with Shub Nagrath, which is Cain saw that Shub Nagrath was erased from existence and doesn't want that to happen to himself. So his plan is to kill all versions of himself to become the singular version of himself, and he wants to get the Black Stone as well. Oh, I forgot to mention, in the episode prior, when Larson sees Cain, he calls him Nyarlathotep, which is a well-known eldritch deity. When I heard that, I was like, oh, Nyarlathotep. Ah! So, Cain is definitely the main antagonist now. So, this is just an amazing episode that sets up what season 5 is going to be, and he sends Arthur and John to the past. Oh, before that, he also asks John, hey, so, you lied to Arthur. I'm going to put you back in the world, but before that, do you want me to wipe Arthur's memory? And John is like, fuck. And Arthur's like, do not do that. And John's like, do it, because I get it so much that he just wants to erase everything bad that he's ever done, so that he could just good with Arthur and return back to normal. And then Cain's like, no, I'm not. And that's such a human mistake from John. That's just so beautifully implemented and written that I just love. And then they're sent to England, alternate past England, which is going to get into part 41, the windmill, which is going to be in not being able to shower again, B tier. This is not... So, okay, my issues with Season 5 do not start here, because this is simply an inventory episode where they go through what they have, and what's the next steps. They investigate the windmill, they encounter the owl, which is Lilith, but we don't know that at this point. He named him, right? Alexander? Alexander the Owl. They use the Glass of Light to see where they need to head, which is Castle Carringford, eventually we'll learn. And then there's also just a wall with like a tear in it that breathes. Yeah, that's fun. But, knowing where this season goes, the way that this episode set it up for that direction, I did not enjoy. So it's just going in middle of the road. Part 42, the Prince is going in Mother Darkness's plan. Mother Darkness, I don't dislike Mother Darkness or her inclusion in the story, but the way that it's used, and Mother Darkness is used in this season, is not that enjoyable. I feel like there's untapped potential there. So they're in Mother Darkness's halls. They're in the witches' halls. That's it. And the hag, the witch, this is where they encounter the prince, who's a zombie, who fights them. They kill the zombie prince. He becomes the prince. Arthur just takes the name. This is when they make Yorick, which should give some points for this episode, but Yorick is sustained throughout the entire season. Yorick has much better moments here in this season, so I'll keep this one at this level. Yorick is really... I love Yorick a lot. They steal the witch's talisman, and then Arthur is stabbed by the witch. And I feel like being stuck in these tunnels just feels like the same thing as the mines in Addison in season 3, and I'm just like, this just doesn't feel any different. Maybe a little squishier, maybe a little wetter, but I just don't. It just feels it's nothing new. At least we get part 43, the witch, which is going to in Lilith mentioned, A tier. So really good moment, because again we have a different point of view, slightly different. It's not the point of view of the witch at first, but she's definitely the main focus here, because we can't hear John until she makes a spell to be able to hear John. And so there's this argument that John and the witch have, and Yorick's there as well, playing both sides. And I think it's a really interesting discussion being had about humanity and its worth, and both John and the witch give really compelling arguments on either side. And I think that's really good writing. This is the first episode that Arthur actually dies. He's actually killed here, which I feel like he should have died prior. It's neither here nor there. But it's a slightly different framing device of just John dealing with the witch. And I like how it's set up from the get-go, that the witch is skulking through their inventory, and she pulls out something. We hear like a metal movement, and John just says it's a thing from Lang. So he's that we're definitely like, it's not the glass of Lang, the thing from Lang. We can't see it. We can only hear it. So we're not fully sure. And then he's like pretends to be convinced by the witch's argument about humanity bad, Mother Darkness good, kill all humans. She forces him to say that he's the king in yellow. She doesn't know who the king in yellow is, but she's like, you're some sort of deity, obviously. You should claim your deityness and reject humanity. And he says, you know what? Yes, I am the king. I hate humanity. Hope is meaningless. He chooses to be whole again. He wants to find a new body. He says he convinced Arthur to hide the talisman, but he doesn't remember where. And he says that the object of Lang will help the witch find it. So he tells the witch, put it up to your face and pull the trigger. And she shoots herself with the gun, which is so fun. It's so juicy that John was able to manipulate that. He was like, no one will ever manipulate me because of how much I've changed and grown because of Arthur. And John kills the witch. So good. Such a good moment there. It's not S tier because it's in this arc of like the witch tunnels that I'm not enjoying. So I had to re-record this because there was some background noise that I just could not edit out. Anyways, part 44 of The Deliverance is going in not being able to shower again. I think this episode's fine. It's somewhat like a filler episode. It's definitely a transitory episode connecting two different points. We're getting into an arc that I don't quite enjoy, or we're still in an arc that I don't quite enjoy of Malevolent Season 5. That's fine. The big thing, good, is Arthur and Dwayne. And that's really fun because he's dead, or he was dead at that point. And so we're introduced to the Waylay at the first point, and he's listening to Vickozone, who I had to look up is a character from Hudsucker Proxy from 1994, directed by the Coen brothers, played by Peter Gallagher. And Vickozone is playing Why Keep On Breaking My Heart by Nina Simone. Sure. And he served a blood and sand. And that is a drink that he was served by Peter Parker. No, it's Peter Yang, who's also Parker. He was served by Parker to help him get out of his depression after Farrow died, and then he used that same experience to help Oscar get out of his alcoholism for a moment in season 4. That was fine, and now he's served that again, which means that whoever is serving him, this waiter and this manager that is mentioned, knows about him well enough to be like, yeah, he would like this blood and sand. Anyways, he is spat out of the Waylay when he comes back to life after John brings it back with the talisman, and then there is a time skip, and John, Arthur, and Yorick are trying to get out of the witch's maze, which is, I don't hate it, I don't like it, but we're still in here, we're still in the maze, we're still in the tunnels, I don't want to be here anymore, they don't want to be here anymore either, and there's some arguments about how to get out of the maze, and that's just, I don't quite enjoy that. Yorick convinces them to take remove the hand from the dead body of the witch, for some reason, and that's, setting up the hand of malevolence. I think it was really well implemented, this sort of John's not fully believing in Yorick, and Arthur's like, we have to believe him because I want to, etc. So I mean, it was a little not convoluted, but definitely like we get why Arthur is doing this for Yorick, and it's definitely setting something up. So I'm excited to see what comes after that. Turns out, spoiler alert, it's not that good for them. It's still, I mean, I liked what the hand does in general, but whatever. And then they get spat out of the maze for Deus Ex Machina, I guess, of the water tunnel. And then they're just in the forest, and they're like figuring out what to do. This is the first time that Yorick names them Dies Irae, which I remember being like, oh, that means Day of Wrath. What does that mean? And then I don't think I even mentioned Dies Irae in the rest of my recording, but I'm like, that doesn't really have a good payoff, I feel like. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a good payoff, because when we're already getting fucky wucky with time, the day of Wrath, I don't even know what day that is, so I don't know. There's no good payoff, in my opinion, about that unless it's mentioned anywhere else. And it's a very middle of the road. Good. I love the Waylay. Everything else is just sort of like So that's why it's in this position. Part 45, the fire, is going in Mother Darkness's plan, similar to John's continuous returning to Lily, the nurse. We keep coming back to Arthur and Farrow, and I think a lot of Arthur's emotions about Farrow were worked through and dealt with in season 3 in the mines with Larson, because Larson killed his own children to get power. So Arthur sees himself in Larson and hates that Larson killed his own children. So, and also Arthur accidentally killed Farrow, let Farrow die. And so he's dealing with that emotion. I think the arguments that I was not enjoying from Arthur and John from season 3 finally finished there. We're returning back to this sort of conversation about Farrow's death and Arthur's culpability at this moment. And I don't enjoy that because it feels like we've already done this before. They go to this village, it's empty. They make a fire, and there is just a guy there who appears. He's named Malum, who is tasked to do something for a child or a dead child or something like that. And they have this conversation about Farrow. Arthur's just, trying to deal with, is he a murderer? Is he not? Is he good? Is he bad? Whatever. Which is like fine, I guess. And then also it says that the fire outside is also Farrow. The fire inside Arthur that keeps moving is also Farrow. But also the fire is just Hope. Farrow's kind of helping him, kind of not. We're not fully sure about that, but definitely is, in death, she helps motivate him, whether that's metaphorical or actually literally her ghost is helping. I'm not sure which one I like. I do not like either. And Malum is a fine character. Malum also tells him that they're being followed by Mother Darkness. So, warning about that. And, I don't think this episode does much for Arthur, and because he's already dealt with his issues with Farrow and his guilt and culpability about it regarding Larson, and now we're just kind of come back to this, and it just feels like a filler episode. And yeah, we do get, there was a choice between a truth and an item for Malum to give them. 272 people vote for truth, 41 people vote for an item, and I think the truth of what Mother Darkness is helps, but otherwise it's just sort of like filler to me, unfortunately. Okay, part 46, The Unclean, is going in worm sound effects. If I'm keeping track, this is the second episode ever so far that is in the lowest tier. The other one was 17 to Fall. I do not like this episode because we're back to a Monster of the Week type format with Horrig, and it is annoying. It is annoying because, in the Q&A that I listened to about season 5, Harlan Guthrie also agrees that 45 and 46 were probably the least successful written episodes to him because they feel part of season 2, which I agree with. Part 45 and part 46 could fit perfectly well in the Dreamlands. And I just feel like because we're doing so much with Kane, so much with Scratch, the Order of the Fallen Star, the Blackstone, these 2 episodes feel like really big detractions from the plot. And I'm like, come on, let's get back to it. But all of a sudden we have this fey, fungal monster, eldritch deity that they have to deal with, but also they don't, because Arthur convinces Horrig to let him go and he's sick, but then that is just resolved pretty quickly. And I don't like that. I do not like Horrig. I think Horrig is an interesting type of antagonist, but definitely is a larger type of antagonist for a larger type of story. But for one episode and the small little moments after the fact, no, I don't care. Part 47, The Hand, is going in Lilith mentioned A tier, coming off of Horrig. we're starting to get better. We're starting to get on track of what was happening. When we start using the genre of folk horror to its advantages, we have York bartering to get the Hand of Malevolence made, which is really fun. And he tells him about Lilith following them. The owl, Alexander the Owl, which has been following them, is Lilith, who was Scratch. And we get, that's an eventual person that we're going to have to deal with. In what capacity, we don't know at this point, but it's really fun. We also get some clues as to the alternate history of this time period. I do not know enough about English history to know how much of a variation this is, but it's fun that we get that. And then throughout it all, Arthur is sort of sick. He feels some sickness from Horg. And I'm like, it's setting up this encounter with Horg that we don't get to. And this sickness that is getting worse and worse is making Arthur not at full capacity, right? And it just feels like they're trying to make Horg make more of an impact than it needs. Part 48, the castle, is going in Lilith mentioned A tier. It is emblematic of my issues with season 5 in that we're 8 episodes in the past, in the alternate English history. And we're also coming off of season 4 with a multitude of different characters that Arthur and John have to interact with. And so I was sort of expecting and hoping that we would follow this type of story, but now we're in the past, dealing with cultists in the past, dealing with multiple people in the past, and Arthur has to deal with, okay, I'm from the future. I cannot tell that to people. How am I going to do this? But from the get-go, we got stuck with dealing with the witch's maze. And I feel like if we wanted to do stuff with the witch, with Mother Darkness, we could have done that. We could have used the space taken up by Malum and Horg in 45 and 46 to deal with the witch, and also have them interacting with cultists. I don't need them, maybe with some allies, definitely dealing with cultists, people, interacting, And finally we get that in 48, the castle, when we go into Castle Carringford and we encounter the many different people. We'll list them in a second. But I wanted that from season 5. I wanted to have this time travel shenanigan bullshit. But we didn't get that, and we got stuck with the witch. We got stuck with the maze. We got stuck with just the countryside, and I'm not a fan of that, unfortunately. We do get a little better now. We are actually interacting with people in the past, cultists. That's what I wanted from the get-go. But we're episode 48 from 40 that we finally get what I want. I don't enjoy this. But anyways, part 48, the castle, is an A tier because we get Arthur and John interacting with these people. Friar Horbrook, aka Dr. Horribilis, he's Prince Warren. Arthur's pretending to be Prince Warren. Gerard the Vendhiel, Langward Ardeen, and Barnabas of Ballitcher. Castle Cangford is owned by Lord Everard, and there's also Alia Shroud, who is just a woman who is blinded, and she's like a witchy type person, which is really fun. And then it hits off a murder mystery. Another reason why I do not like horror, and Harlan Guthrie also said this in his Q&A, we have now a murder mystery. Really fun. Similar to The Mansion. Similar to other moments that they're trying to investigate a mystery, right? I just mentioned the first one I can think of, but also I didn't like that episode. Whatever. Arthur has to solve this mystery. However, he's incapacitated half the time because of Horg. So John has to do the investigation, and John doesn't have that learning. And so I'm like, Harlan said he was really frustrated because now Arthur is incapacitated. He can't do the investigating, it has to be John, but Arthur's the investigator, he's the PI, and so he can't do the cool PI stuff that he usually does because he's sick from Horg, which doesn't do anything. Still a really good episode because of all the characters interacting and stuff like that. But Horg just keeps bringing it down. Part 49, The Suspects, is going in Lilith mentioned A tier. Culmination of the murder storyline. A bunch of people die, which is really fun. Eventually finds out that Lord Everend is doing all this killing, and then Barnabas is also killing people, and we find out, we learn that Lord Everett is just luring cultists here to kill them because he hates cultists, which I'm like, that's a really cool concept. I wish we got more of. Instead, we got Malum and Horig. This is the last time I'm going to talk about Horig. Okay. We also get some interesting lore about the Black Stone, and that the Order of the Fallen Star is worshipping this aspect of Azathoth, which is also a popular cosmic horror Lovecraftian deity, similar to Nyarlathotep and the King in Yellow. One part that I'm not much of a fan of, but it is well implemented, is, Everin tricks Arthur into falling into a pit that is just large trees. I'm confused about the geography of that. Where is this taking place? But he's in this dark forest that is connected to Shub-Niggurath in some way. In this moment, Arthur's about to give up, but then John reads him Invictus because he wants to read Oscar's letter. Before they went to the Colts, in part 4039, he gets a letter. Arthur gets a letter from Oscar from the hospital, and this is after Oscar got his arm chopped off, and so he's kept that letter the entire time. And when Arthur's about to give up, John takes out the letter and reads it out to Arthur, Oscar's letter, and he reads out Invictus, and that inspires Arthur to keep moving. And also, it's like, that's not what the letter says, right? And John says the letter got washed off, which is like, oh, that hurts, but also such a good subversion. Really like that. The forest is connected to Shub-Niggurath. There's the Dark Young that was mentioned all the way in part 2 when they went to investigate in Miskatonic University, and they learned about the Dark Young that is related to Shub-Niggurath, and they use that knowledge. The patrons, the voices, were asked to vote how should they kill the Dark Young. The decisions are the maw, the eyes, the legs, the face, the underbelly, or the teeth. And 326 people vote for the maw. They went back to the episode and checked, okay, what does the Dark Young, how do you kill the Dark Young? You shoot them in the mouth. 11 people voted for eyes, 1 person for the legs, 4 people for the face, 16 people for the underbelly, and 2 people for the teeth. And then, Arthur convinces Everin that he's actually a good person. He has the coin that he was given to by the 3 soldiers all the way in part 14, The Desert. So really good culmination of a lot of things that happened in past episodes, which I really like. Part 50, The Company, is going in not being able to shower again. B tier. So we have all of a sudden Arthur is part of Lord Everend's retinue, I guess you could say. He has to escort the Black Stone to a location that he does not know. And when I heard that was told in the episode prior, Everin told Arthur, I need a 4th person to go on this expedition, on this company, to escort the Black Stone. And when I first heard that, I was like, how is this going to be written? Because it's just going to be more travel? I don't know if I'm going to be excited for that. I think what he eventually lands on is pretty fine. But this episode doesn't start it off pretty well. But there's still some good moments here. We meet different people. They're going with Alia, but they also go with Sir Roderick Vale, a knight. His voice just echoes in his helmet, which is really fun. And then Antoine de Foyle, which John has like a little connection because he looks just like the Antoine that they had seen clues about in Harper's Hill, in the lighthouse that tried to summon Shub-Niggurath. And you don't really know how this Antoine's connected to that Antoine. They look the same. Different alternate history. Maybe something else happened in Arthur's history that led this Antoine to become that Antoine. That's just really fun speculation. No answers there, but that's fine. They also encounter Mother Darkness here. Mother Darkness really fun. And Lilith is following them. They know that as well. Finally get the name of Lilith that they're being followed by, and that's really exciting. And then one or two moments here and there of just meeting with different people, Antoine and Roderick and Alia. A weakness of just being one guy voicing this. Alia should have been voiced, but she wasn't. It's fine. We also learn about the backstory of like the Vanguard and what Yorick is and how strange Yorick is. Really strange world building there, but really cool that he's something of his own, which does build up to things. Part 51, the purpose, is Lilith mentioned, A tier. I really like how, so my worry of how they're going to write this travel, really well implemented here, because we get flashbacks and flash forwards of different important moments of the travel with, so that's the past, and then the flash forward or the present is Arthur in the rain talking with Antoine, and they're both, Antoine's dying, and they're alone, and shit is happening. So we get the backstory of Sir Roderick Vale getting killed, Mother Darkness kills him, or Mother Darkness is doing stuff. We think that it's Lilith. Eventually we'll learn that it's Mother Darkness doing that. Most likely, Parsimony, it's Mother Darkness. And then Alia going to sleep and not being able to wake up as well. The question of where the Blackstone is also brought up a lot. Where they're going, what is their purpose, is brought up a lot, which is really fun. And then just Lilith Scratch coming in at the very end, showing up and being like, I'm evil. Love that. And then Antoine is dying. He's sick. Also from Mother Darkness, I believe. And then we know Scratch/Lilith comes in. And at this point, it's just Lilith. We know that Lilith does stuff with nightmares. We've seen it before in part, 30-something, the nightmare. We know that there's going to be a nightmare. And so knowing that, it's so cool that we still get subverted and get surprised as to what Lilith is going to do in the next episode. I should have been talking about that in this part 52, The Wager, S tier, Yorick's Laugh, one of the best episodes of the show ever, of all time. Like I said, we already know that Lilith does nightmare stuff. How is this going to be different? It is different somehow. It's so fun manipulation of John and Arthur to get the Black Stone, and then reveals that the Black Stone is not there, and it's inside Antoine. I think it's so cool. I wish there was set up a bit more about Antoine having tattoos that you can kind of just like barely see and be like, he has tattoos. That's kind of odd. But still a great reveal to show that Antoine has this Black Stone in his body. So cool, terrifying. And then Cain shows up and kills Lilith, uses the Hand of Malevolence, shows that Yorick was actually working for Cain against his will. That's so cool. And then he reveals to Arthur and John his wager. And then we have also the music of the wager really well implemented here. Well, beforehand, Arthur has learned from Antoine and others that the Black Stone can be used with the Grey Stone to awaken Azathoth. Azathoth is asleep, and his dream is our reality. And so he, in this episode, is like, hey, Cain, please do not wake up Azathoth. And Cain's like, okay, I'm not going to wake up Azathoth. I'm going to kill him. And I'm like, love that. Love that revelation. And then we have the wager of he wants to replace Azathoth and remake reality in his own vision. And that's the wager. And then he just kills Arthur and John. And, also his orchestra is all versions of Arthur, which is like, okay, that's insane. And that's really fun. This is just an amazing, amazing episode to the end of season 5. Hey, the fuck? What? So season 5, I think, would be my least favorite because it does not do what I wanted to do. That's my own personal critique. I think it's well written, but then also 45 and 46. Harlan Guthrie himself says were not well used, which I agree with, but whatever. Towards the latter half of the season, it started to get better and better, and then that one random really good episode of the witch. But it starts amazing, and then we have like a downfall, which I don't quite enjoy. With like Intermezzo, it's just so good, and then Intermezzo and The Wager are both like reciprocal episodes that bookend this season in a really interesting, fun ways with Kane. And I wish there's some untapped potential here with Mother of Darkness, with the past timey-wimey bullshit, you know. So that's just my thoughts. All right, season 6. I don't know how much battery my microphone has left. Anyways, season 6 covers the Dark World and the ending of Kane's plan. I think this is probably the most successful season. Not my favorite, which is season 4, but definitely in terms of writing, almost every episode is like really good. Spoilers, I guess. I don't know. The tiers in S tier, we have Yorick, I Would Die For You. I love Yorick so much. And this would be, that's S tier, best tier. A tier is Arthur's a Rugged Bod. Arthur spends much of the majority of this season naked, which is like, I'm sorry to be a man, I'm sorry to be gay, but also like, he's naked. And I assume also through all of this stuff, he's probably just like rugged. You know what I mean? B tier, middle of the road, is no shower, frowny face. We're back to that. No shower. Like I said, he spends most of the time naked. So that's the middle of the road. C tier, little white men scurry to me like rats, which is a reference to a meme, but also the men that are rats there as well. And then F tier, lowest tier, is Stuck in the Dark World. This episode would be Stuck in the Dark World, which is really bad. Similar to Coda, similar to Intermezzo. The Capo is 52.5, which is going in Arthur's Rugged Bod A tier. And we have Arthur and Parker coming home, and they go to the office and they find the book. Arthur finds the book, reads it, opens it. We see Parker getting killed by John, or the entity at this point, being taken over by the entity. And the really bad thing that the King Yellow does to Arthur, we finally see that happen. And then it just cuts to them being in the waylay. There's Jerry, the jokester James, who is doing stand-up there, and Arthur and John are confused. They're together again, and they meet the manager, which is the last version of Nyarlathotep that has not been killed by Kane, and he tells them, hey, what's up? You need to help me defeat Kane. You will be sent to the Dark World. That lighter, I have not mentioned the lighter. Oh my fucking god, I'm a failure. The lighter has not been plot relevant up until now. It has been used at times. We learned that it is Roland Cummings' lighter in season 4. We know that Arthur just sort of had it in season 2. He was like, yeah, it's not mine though, I don't smoke. I just found it in my office. We learn that the lighter, was Roland Cummings, is actually connection by the manager. And he says the lighter is really important, and you need something small and mundane to hide from Kane. He says the lighter will provide light to them. So they're the only people who can defeat Kane. So he's giving them a second chance in the Dark World and figure out how to defeat Kane. And at the very end of it, the manager talks to somebody. He says that they piggybacked and that they need each other and don't fuck it up this time. And he could be either talking to Lilith or to the audience, the voices. Who knows? Really good setup. Also like that the manager sounds just like Kane as well. That's fun. Part 53, The Black Tower, is going in no shower, frowny face, middle of the road. Starting off, season 6 feels very similar to season 2 in that they're traversing a alien world. Season 6 does it less, but does more with less episodes, which is I'm really happy about, because in each episode they go through like 3 different locations. And I think, this is middle of the road because they're just simply traversing, and this is when Arthur's mostly naked, and they're not showering. But I think because this is original content, the Dark World is not within the Cthulhu mythos like the Dreamlands are. Really well written because it's personal to Harlan Guthrie. You know what I mean? Arthur and John wake up almost getting buried alive. They kill the person who's burying them alive, and then they turn on the lighter and they're like, oh shit, the dark world was turning us evil, basically. And now they have to traverse the dark world. This is where we get the Black Tower. There some men that are also naked scurrying around, and they're getting killed by the rat catcher. And then they go through no man's land with the huge tall lights that stare at them, that I'm not fully sure what it means, but it's terrifying. And then they get shot at and chased by a man who we eventually learn is the son of Marie Frederick, who died in the war. He's now in the dark world, being a slaughter avatar, basically. And he finally clothes Arthur. And it's like, looking at the overall impact of this season, the Dark World is only there for like 4 episodes, and it feels like so much has happened so far in just one episode. So much of the Dark World has been described to us in just this one episode that I'm like, honestly, really great use of time. Efficient, too. Part 54, The Living Wake, is going in middle of the road, no shower tier. Again, we're back in this Dark World thing, and it's good. It's just not my favorite, but it's still really well written. They're going through a blighted land, and they find a village, and buildings are just popping up that are not actually built. They're facsimiles of the real world. There's a lot of symbolism here that I think I'm missing out on, I would say. Maybe some allusions to other types of stories, other cosmic stories. I'm not fully sure. There's a funeral. They go to like a funeral. There's like a body, and there's the headstone says John Doe. And so John has this closure moment with himself about all that he's been through, all the humanity he's gained. And that's a really nice moment, but also it goes on for a long time, and I'm like kind of tired of it. It goes on for a long time. And they climb through a chasm. They have conversation about Faro and whether she would be here or not. And then they see over an ocean a upside down isopod floating in the air. That's like a city chained to the ground. They climb up to it and find that that's York. Okay? Which I'm like, Dark World, weird, creepy stuff. I get it. It's good. It's fine. But also, why? But also, I don't care why, because it's just crazy cosmic horror shit. And York is like, I know a way how to get you back to the real world. You just need a body. And sends him to talk to the doll maker. Part 55, The Last Doll Maker, is going in A tier, Arthur's Rugged Bot. I really like the doll maker, traversing there is pretty quick. Oh, I forgot about this. So sorry. So the last episode prior to that, York asks John to tell Arthur about his time in the Dark World. They know that the body of Hastur is there, so that's one body for John. And now they have to go to Dollmaker to get a body for Arthur. But before that, this episode, we get a detailing of John's time in the Dark World as the King of Yellow, angry at Arthur for sacrificing himself and still failing in his goal, stuck in the Dark World. He builds a citadel of bone using Arthur's body. Cain just constantly resupplies him with Arthur's. And John is just killing him as punishment for himself, but also anger, trying to express an anger and stuff like that. And Dark World's also making him really emotional. And Cain is just lapping it up, giving him so many different bodies of Arthur. And Arthur, feels anger at that, but he's like, if it had to be someone, at least it was me. And I know you, John. I know that you have grown, and it has taken a lot for you to tell me about this. It's been 3 seasons since then, 4 seasons since then, and that's been hanging on you all the time, which I'm like, that's crazy. But Cain just wanted to do that to mess with us. We're not going to be messed with, which I really like. And then the Dollmaker is a really fun. They're not an antagonist. They are just there to help. And I guess they would be an antagonist because they have to kill the butcher in exchange to make them a body. And they're like, okay. But I think this is just a really good episode because of the past of the Dark World, and then the the Dollmaker, the last Dollmaker. Part 56, the parting glass, is going in no shower, frowny face. B tier, we have the end of the Dark World arc. They're leaving the Dark World at the end of this. And they go to kill the Butcher. And those moments are really fun, but at the same time, it's interspersed with the Butcher, the older version of the Butcher, talking to the younger version of the Butcher about his past and how he got into hunting. And it does fill in some space about his past that we didn't have, but I don't think it was fully necessary. And I feel it was a little clunky in how it's used, because it's definitely like, okay, we can use these inserts to move time ahead. And I feel like could have done something else. Instead of doing this, the Butcher stuff, the Butcher pretty much ended with his death, and I was fine with that. But really cool that the choice in that episode of the Butcher stays behind or Noel stays behind. In the old Butcher's story, Arthur had chosen Noel to stay behind, and so Noel died and the Butcher stayed alive. But then he doesn't really say what happens after that. What would not have happened, like if Cain had not interfered at the end of 40, what would have happened? We don't get that. That's fine. But the end of it is when it gets really good, because now we have Arthur and John sort of being like, okay, I have to die. I have to just die, and you have to keep moving forward without me, which is really sad. And I think it's just a fine episode. I just don't quite enjoy the inserts of the Butcher. I do like that they killed him. I think that's a bold decision to make. Part 57, The Fallen Seed, is going in Yorick, I Would Die For You, S tier. I keep forgetting to mention some important plot details, but these details don't become important until the episodes that I want to know. So at the end of season 5, The Wager, Cain kills Lilith. There's a little sliver of Lilith left that the voices choose Arthur to touch, and then it just sort of into his hand, and he that's not good. He sees there's some sort of scratch on his arm, and it's like, it's Lilith. We know it's Lilith. We don't know that it's Lilith, but we know it's Lilith. You know what I mean? Now, here, 57, Arthur has died, and he's coming back to life because in part 13, he bit up his finger off and left it in the forest, and it regrew into a body, and now he's back alive. And also, who's there? Lilith, possessing him in the same role as John. She's his eyes. And I think the voice acting could have been I think the voice acting was good, because it's taking like the voice of Scratch, and it feels still feminine, and I like the inflection of the voice, but I'm like, bring a woman in to voice Lilith, that's fine, whatever. Really great episode, because we have Lilith guiding Arthur through practically the same thing he had to go through in the Dreamlands. He has to leave a piece of his body in the forest, also naked, man's naked again, rugged body, and he has to bite off a finger of his, because he doesn't want to antagonize Lilith. They also encounter Lorik as well. Really good tying it all together. Lorik teaches Arthur how to shut her up, which I believe it's implied that he had this power all this time with John, but he never knew about it, and so Lorik tells him that he can do it, and so he's able to bargain with Lilith. Lilith and Arthur's arguments are so fun as well, because it's such a different type of character that we haven't interacted with, that Arthur hasn't interacted with, and now is in the role of John, which is really fun. Lilith, I love Lilith so much. The traitor's there again. They mess with the traitor. They use Lilith's transformation powers to trick the traitor into getting some stuff. Lilith reveals that she's been doing a lot of different things in the backstage. She's orchestrated a lot of things without them knowing, which is really fun. She talks about, using, what's his name? Edward William Allen? What is it? Yeah. To try to come back to the world, but then it fucks up and she becomes Scratch, and then Arthur helps her return, and she keeps calling him her favorite, which is so fun, because we don't know why. He doesn't know why. And at the very end, they are met by the heralds of the King in Yellow, We take them to Carcosa. They're at the desert, and they take them to Carcosa to meet the King in Yellow. Part 58, The King in Yellow. It's A tier. Arthur's rugged bod. And this is Arthur talking with the newly formed King in Yellow, who is a combination of Yellow from Larson and John. And so Yellow and John are two different viewpoints of humanity who have become the neutral of the King in Yellow. And so they have really great interactions here. Should he let go of Faroe? Yes or no? Big moment here as well, because I feel like this is a good enough toe back into dealing with Arthur's issues with Faroe that is not so intrusive as Malum's interactions about Faroe. I just really enjoy how the King in Yellow is presented, and then there's a brief moment. Larson's here. He's also naked. And he also dies. He's killed by Lilith when Lilith possesses him. And that's really fun. And now Larson is Lilith, and Lilith is Larson, and Lilith has Larson's accent, which is really fun. For a brief moment, when Lilith leaves Arthur, he can see now. He's no longer blind, which is so fun, so emotional. And at the very end, they're leaving to deal with the Cain. And the king is like, I'm making a decision to become John, leave Yellow, and return to John. We have the amazing talk of like, Arthur is like, I thought I'd looked at you, took my eyesight, but in reality, I gift you my eyesight. And so the king asks Arthur, will you give me your eyesight again? He says, yes. And so now we're back to the status quo, which I am fine with. I have to be fine. It's good, but I think it would have been really interesting if they decided to just be fully separated and have Arthur see, and John's still there, maybe at some, like, ask the king or something like that. I think that would have been a bold decision, but I get why we return to the status quo. It's fine. It's fine. Also, Lilith has a southern accent now. Also, we get a lot of conversation about the decisions, the voices. You know, we get allusions to past decisions, such as searching upstairs or downstairs, taking the road or following the shore, pulling a dagger or running, bread or cheese. So it's sort of talking about how the voices, the patrons, have affected the story in important ways, and it's acknowledging that. Part 59, The Vast Darkness, is going in Arthur's Rugged Bod, A tier. This is multiple different things happening at the same time, but they leave the Dreamlands. The King in Yellow opens a portal. They leave the Dreamlands and they enter into Addison. They're in Larson's estate, which is a really good setting. I did not expect that we would return to Larson's estate, so that's a really good setting there. John and Arthur are like back to normal, back to what they've been doing to investigate, figure out how to stop Cain. They know the plan is to leave the lighter in Cain's pocket, and they're trying to see if they can convince Lilith to trap Cain and not kill Cain. Because if killing Cain, that means that the manager becomes the only Nyarlathotep, and they think that's dangerous. So they're trying to figure out, okay, what should we do? Lilith is not their friend. She's an ally with her own agenda. Figure out what it is. At the same time, Cain is manipulating them again, and we have more conversation about loss and like Arthur not being able to let go of Faroe and stuff like that. Cain just keeps showing him different visions and keeps trying to manipulate them and manipulate the voices as well. And they think that they get him. They reach an amphitheater, and there's like some sort of like play going on. I'm not fully sure what's happening there. But Cain is like messing with Arthur, and Arthur and John are like, why is he messing with? Why does he keep asking us to make decisions? He wants something from us. What does he want? And then he appears from behind and just digs his hands into their head. And he's like, I need to know where the manager is, because he needs to know where the obelisk is. The obelisk is a thing that is important for Cain's plan or whatever. Lilith knows where that is. She does not tell Arthur where that is. And he needs to kill the manager because he wants to be the last Nyarlathotep. And he digs into Arthur's head and finds the where the manager is, and they fail in their plan because they think, oh, one of the visions, Kane shows Arthur and John a future that they can have of Christmas time in a house. Thoreau is older, and all the other people that they've met are there, but John isn't. And at the same time, Kane tricks Arthur, gives him a coin. This is a coin toss, and that coin turns into a lighter, which he tricks Arthur into using. And Arthur and John think that they put the lighter, the manager's lighter, on Kane's pocket, but he didn't. And Lilith tried to attack him and did not have the power from the lighter, and so they failed in the mission. Kane gets the information of where manager is, goes to try to kill him at the waylay, leaves John and Arthur on a frozen lake in Addison, right? And really fun that prior to this, in one of the visions that Kane showed Arthur had seen Thoreau dying. Thoreau told him something. Thoreau told him it's not cold enough. He doesn't understand why. And now he understands that the only way forward is to die again, because Kane is going to the waylay. Anytime Arthur dies, he goes to the waylay. So he lets himself fall into the frozen lake. It's cold enough now to be able to go to the waylay, which is such a good, so fun, such like death being final, but still being something that moves the characters forward. Love that. Love that so much. Part 6C, the final act, is going in Yorick, I Would Die For You, S tier. It has to be. It's the last episode. It's the finale of the show, the season. So good. A lot of things happen here. We have in the waylay dealing with Kane having killed a bunch of people in the waylay, and they're trying to talk to Kane like, hey, don't do this, don't kill Azathoth. And Kane's like, okay, well, if I can't find the manager and I can't find the obelisk, then I'm just gonna kill Azathoth anyways and see if that works. And he plays the song, what's it called? We Will All Go Together When We Go. Really great song, great nihilism there. There's conversations about, what makes a god, and Kane wants to be a god. He has daddy issues. Daddy issues abound throughout this because of his decision to just like, yeah, let me just kill Azathoth anyways. Then the manager and Lilith activate the obelisk, which alerts Kane to where it is. And right before he goes there, he takes Arthur to like a beach. He's like, I'm just gonna leave you here with Thoreau over there, who's like a baby who's walking towards him. So we're gonna leave there. And then I don't quite enjoy this moment that much because it feels too disconnected. But like in a moment prior, I believe it was in the prison pits, right? I have a note. Yeah, part 19, the prison. In the prison pits, Arthur had a dream of being at the beach, and then like a young girl tells him to run. And so he decides to run from Thoreau and go through the portal following Kane to the obelisk. I feel like that was not needed that much, but whatever. And then the obelisk itself in Arkham, so fun, so well described. There's some chanting in the background that is just hypnotizing and terrifying, and I absolutely love that. And the entire sequence throughout that of Kane showing up. He has wings made of the body of Arthur, and he notes that Arthur is the very last Arthur in the entirety of the universe, because he had to kill all of them to make his wings. The black stone being used to turn the king in yellow into the king in red, that's something. Lilith revealing that the reason why she kept calling Arthur her favorite was just to mess with Kane, to make Kane kill all the other Arthur, so this Arthur is a singular Arthur, and then using the Blackstone and destroying it because he's the only Arthur. Mind blown. Amazing. The fight sequence, the chase sequence is fine, is good, it's just really good. He manages to incapacitate Arthur, and then he takes him into the air, and then Arthur distracts him for enough for John to manifest and put the lighter into his pocket. So now Lilith appears and traps him, and then saves Arthur from just splatting on the ground, and then turns into Thoreau to let Arthur die. I don't think they should have done that, having Lilith turn into Thoreau, but it's still really well implemented, still really good. And then he dies, and then he's dead, and then he wakes up, in the waylay talking to the manager, and the manager was like, you succeeded your goal, congrats, I'm going to give you a prize, I'm going to put you back in the real world. He gives him an option of whether if he wants to wipe the slate clean or be separated from John, but he decides to stay with John. He decides he needs to move on from Poirot. His purpose has to be something else. And John's like, I love you. He doesn't say that. Well, they did say I love you to each other at different points, but you know, whatever. Really good ending. And the manager just sends him away. And that's the ending, the official ending of this season. But then we get DC Al Coda, which is 60.5, which is in A tier, Arthur's Rugged Bod. Really short moment here. Again, okay. Arthur and John are in Arthur's office. It's all new. Everything's new here. And there's some things here that are a little odd. So, for example, there's a jar with a bone shard, like a jawbone, which is Arthur had attacked Kane and ripped off a piece of his jaw. And so that is now in a jar. That's significant. Don't take that out of the jar. There's also a music box from Luna and Tom and the patrons of the Waylay. Who's Luna and Tom? And then there's a letter from Daniel. Daniel had talked to Oscar and is sending this letter to Arthur after talking to Oscar. And he says he can now understand the poem that Arthur had told him about. And so Arthur tells John this long poem, Rudyard Kipling, called If. And that's a poem being read again. Whatever. But the best part of it, at the very end, a woman walks in, voiced fully by a woman, and she's like, someone needs to get your mail. That's not me. I'm not your secretary. And she's like, well, why do you look like you just seen a ghost, Dad? And he's like, oh, Poirot? And then that's ending. That's how it ends. Season 6 ends. I'm excited for Malevolent Threshold. I will be covering it on this channel. I don't know in what capacity, but I do want to cover Threshold. However, I feel like this story should have ended full stop. But from what I've heard about Harlan Guthrie and how he writes and how he's enjoying this, I am on board to see how the story continues. But at least it's going to be disconnected from the Blackstone. So there's that. But anyways, Poirot is back alive. Don't know how I feel about that. Mostly positive emotions, some negative. That's a really great ending for Malevolent. He's calling this Malevolent Blackstone. The next one is Malevolent Threshold, which is when we're going to get tie-up ends with the King in Red and Noel, and he mentioned Horig. No, please no. Mother Darkness, okay, maybe yes. And yeah. Anyways, I rearranged the rankings for Season 6. I think the best one is the Lilith-centered episode. This is just really good. And then I placed DC Al Coda at the top of A tier. I think I'm going to retract that for now. I'll just keep it as is. And I do think that the King in Yellow and then all these are just really good. The episodes within the Dark World, yeah, they're kind of the worst of the season, in my opinion. The worst, but also still good. Still very well written. I'm just not a fan of them, unfortunately. But it is what it is. And yeah, that is all episodes of Malevolent ranked. I did not want to make all 60 episodes. It's actually 66 with Intermezzo, DC Al Coda, etc. It's actually 66 episodes according to my pictures that I have collected. Anyways, I didn't want to rank all of them together in one huge ranking, because one, that would kill my computer. I already have so much issues using this tier ranking that I have to use my boyfriend's computer to make these, so I'm not going to do that. That's too much episodes in one as well. That's the second one. And also, each individual season, I want to take it as its own and analyze it within the season, right? And so that's why I separated them. I did the same thing with the Magnus Archives. You know, every season has its own ranking, and I did not want to do a full ranking of the entire season because it's 200 episodes, and that's a lot. This one's at least only 66, but still, I just wanted to have them separated, and it's easier to film. You know what I mean? Yeah, 3 different videos. And yeah, I will be, like I said, I will be covering Threshold in some capacity. I'm not fully sure how. I don't know how long it'll be either. So I don't want to. I don't know. I'll see what happens, and hopefully I'll get this out around the same time that Threshold is coming out. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. If you've stuck around for this third part of the ranking, I was able to film this all in one sitting, so we'll see when this comes out. Malevolent, I am vexed about because there's so much that I cannot see because I'm not part of the voices. I'm not on the Patreon, I'm not on the Discord. But Ass is still a pretty successful story with some rough around the edges things that I hope that Threshold buffs out. So, yeah. And again, this is all just my opinion. So please let me know in the comments if you disagree with anything I've said so far. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, share with friends, let me know what you think. Don't forget to be passionate, and I'll see you later.